do you think going to New York maybe opened up a different point of view though with your own body image, or do you think that that inflicted on you questioning it 10 times more?
No, I think what happened is that by taking I think I'd always thought that the fact that I was the big girl, I'd kind of worn that identity actually. I'd kind of felt it from other people, I'd felt it internally, but I kind of wore that, the duff, the designated ugly fat friend. Kind of, I had worn that because I didn't really think I was worth very much. And so I guess even though it took a long time for me to figure out the body image stuff, I think just getting a sense of self and a sense of worth and self-esteem started with making that decision to say, this is the career that I want for the rest of my life. So even though the body image stuff did come later, it was because I had the muscle memory and I had already flexed those kind of, I want this, I know I'll feel better if I do this. I guess it helped me make those changes further down the line. But I
Yeah.
struggled going into jobs thinking, I assume one of the reasons why I wanted to become a journalist is because think about it, all of the protagonists in the movies in the 90s and early 2000s, how many female protagonists were journalists or worked on glossy magazines?
Yeah.
And that was, I have to be honest, that was part of the reason why I wanted to be one of those journalists, because I just kind of thought by osmosis, I will become thin and glamorous and look like Kate Hudson. you know
Well, hey, here's the thing. I think what I hear from all of this is that you were validating yourself in an area in which you knew that you wanted to achieve. And then that started to help you get that validation for your self image back. Because
Mm.
sometimes it's doing it the opposite way. It's not paying attention to what your physical attributes are, but instead what your heart and your mind, your soul is. And when you can start to focus on all of those and you start to validate yourself there, you actually gain that power into looking at yourself with different eyes. And it can happen quite quickly because you're not focusing on the imperfections that will evolve over time. You're
Mm.
focusing on the perfections of knowing what you're good at, and then that helps you within yourself. We ever so often, in the body image community and world, and I think you tapped into this a little bit as well, is we judge our bodies for not hitting those milestones. And that's something that I think a lot of women experience, a lot of people that I've had conversations with. Was that something, that you felt your body was getting in the way of your success at some point in your life?
Yeah, I thought people saw my size before they saw me and what I was capable of. I definitely think that. And I started once I hit the magazine, actually. And I mean, you know what it's like. I was working for a celebrity magazine, I was going to events with celebrities. And I mean, it's one thing seeing famous people on television, it's quite another seeing them in the flesh and kind of getting a sense. I know it sounds weird, but everyone is much smaller in the flesh than you think they are based on what
Yeah.
you've seen on the television. And I just went on a cycle of yo-yoing. So I would work out really hard, I would diet really intensely, I would lose weight. People would be like, oh my goodness, Emma, that's amazing. And you'd get all this reflected glory, but then inevitably I couldn't sustain the fitness regime because it was grueling. I remember once I went to see the best trainer in London. Like, this is the guy who was training all the big celebrities. And he did a personal training session with me that I wrote about. And I followed it religiously for 18 months and his diet plan and everything. And it was the first time in my life that I'd lost loads and loads of weight. And the amount of positive feedback I got was just incredible. But I remember going back for a review and him saying, right, let's put you on the next one. And it was even harder. And I had to tap out because I just couldn't sustain it. I'd done pretty well. I was in my late 20s and I'd sustained it for about 18 months, but it just reached the point where I just could not do it anymore. And so I then cycled back out of it. And then all of the other things came back where I thought, oh, I'm such a failure. So I beat myself up going on this yo-yo time and time again every 2 years. And I can look at pictures from that time and I can tell you where I was emotionally, how I was feeling about myself, whether I'd merely not gone to that event because I didn't want to be seen. So it's just this kind of ridiculous when I look back on it now, but I kind of understand. I want to have compassion for that person because I was so caught up in how I looked being what my value was. So I thought, well, when I'm smaller, I'll be more valuable. People will like me more, I'll be more successful. But that's completely inaccurate. But that was definitely something that was embedded in my head of the smaller I am, the slimmer I am, the better blanket term I am.